Hello everyone again. This is part 3 of how to turn your C4, C5, C6 Corvette into a better handling track capable car while also not making it abusive on the road. So the first thing we're going to look at now that we've got all of our general maintenance, all the fluids changed, is to look at alignment. Now what most people don't realize is that Corvettes are not designed for the track from the factory. What you'll find out when you check your camber is that your front tires are cambered positive, which means they're turned this way. So they're turned with the bottom in and the top out, which actually makes them corner worse. And the reason they do that is so it's more stable on a highway. Since most people own Corvettes, only use them to meet up at Cracker Barrel, they design them this way so that they're stable on, you can set the cruise and just cruise to your dining destination. So what I wanted to show you was the stock alignment you'll find on your Corvette. This is even true of Z06s. My dad has a C6 Z06. And it's the same way, which is kind of aggravating because that's supposed to be a track-ready car. Now I know this isn't the perfect way to do this. I have this camber gauge set up for 19-inch rims, which is what I use on my track car. But these are 17, but we're going to be pretty close. I'm locating on the same spots on the tire. But you'll notice, and this was true of my other one, that we're at a positive 1 degree. So what we want to do on ours is we want to add 2 degrees of camber, which would make it a negative 1 degree. Now let's look at the back. So the back, you can see, is at 0, which is actually really good. That's really what you want for everyday driving. The nice thing about the rear on the C4 is you can really adjust the camber on these. It's fairly easy. But I wanted you to show you this because this is what I found on my other car as well. I was very disappointed that they were cambered in such a way, and wondered why I was having a hard time in corners. Now C4 camber alignment is done here in the top A-arm. On your newer Vettes, it's done down here with some bolts that have a cam. On a C4, the shims for the top A-arm are back here. I believe on a C5 they're bolted right to the side, and so you would pull the shims out. Now you have to be careful when you adjust camber. You're also going to affect caster. So if you have, like on a C6, when you have the cams, the bolts that adjust in there, my recommendation is to mark them. And so when you move the front one, when you move the back one, that you move the front one the same amount. Now you're going to increase caster doing it that way, but a little more caster isn't bad, and it's not really a big deal. You won't notice it. Now this is what the back looks like to adjust for camber. You can see the notches here, and like I said, you'll want to make a line, maybe this one here, put it right here, and that way when you loosen this bolt back here, you can turn this here and it'll actually push the entire assembly out. It pushes the bottom out, and that will, again, once you do that, it's going to affect your toe, so then you have to realign the back. If you're not going to track the car a lot, I wouldn't mess with the rears. I would leave the camber where it's at, just leave it at 0. Otherwise, you'll find that you wear out the inside of your back tires too quickly. To give you a reference of what the difference looks like, this is what +1 camber looks like on a C4. You can see it doesn't, it's pretty much straight up and down, but it definitely does not tilt in. And this is what 0 looks like. You really can't tell much difference. If you look straight down the car, it looks straight up and down, which is the way it should. To give you a point of reference of what -1.5 looks like, that's what that looks like on a rear wheel. Now you can see when you look at the bottom that the bottom tire is cambered negatively, and this is what 1 degrees negative camber looks like on the front. On a C4, you're very limited about how much negative camber you can put in. Because the A-arms are non-adjustable, the most negative camber that you can affect is by removing those shims. Now you could also, if you wanted, grind those down so they're even smaller. But you're only going to get about 2 degrees. What I recommend, if you're going to use the car on the road, in the track, is that you do not adjust your front camber more than -2 degrees. If you have more than -2, you're really going to wear out the outside or the inside of your tires before the outside. And if you're not going to track the car all the time, I would leave the rear at 0. And the reason is, again, because then you'll be wearing out your back tires unevenly. But if you are going to track all the time, don't be afraid to set your negative camber up to -3. You want to set your toe at even to up to 1/4 inch out. And if you are going to track the car a lot, then you can go ahead and set the rear negative camber to -1 to -1.5 at the most. That's the most I would go. And then you want to set the toe at 0 to in about 1/8 of an inch. What the toe in does for your rear is when you apply the throttle, it drives the car towards the center instead of trying to pull it out. So when you step on the gas, it actually forces the car to move straight. Now that we've done explanation, what I'm going to do is remove these bolts here, this one here, this one here. I'm going to pull all the shims out and then just tighten these back up. And then when we drop it down, we'll see how much camber we have. Hopefully we have at least -1 degree. When you adjust the camber, either from up here or down there, you're going to affect the toe. So it's a good idea to go ahead and change your tie rod ends. I think they cost about $15 to $30. So it's a good time to do that. I'll put some links in if you want on where to buy. I recommend Rock Auto, of course, but sometimes the shipping kills you, so it's you can just go to your normal auto parts store. These are the shims I pulled out. This is the passenger side. This is the front. This is the rear of the A-arm. And when I measure these with calipers, this is 535, or sorry, 525. This is 435. When I measure the driver's side, the back side is 310. The front is 235. So to keep these even, the most I can take out is 245, because that's the smallest number. So what I'm going to do is in the front left driver's side, there'll be no shim. And the front left, I'm sorry, the rear left A-arm of the driver's side will be a 65. The front right will be 190, and the back right will be 280. That way, whatever I'm changing them from factory will be the same all the way around. Unfortunately, this is really the most you can do without buying adjustable A-arms. This is what I'm reinstalling. The front left, just one shim for the 65 thousandths. On the right side, the front, installing these two, which gives us 190. And then on the back of the right side, these three shims, which gives us approximately 280. And the reason I'm doing it that way is so they're even, and I'm also not affecting caster more than I want to. So we got the shims removed. You can see there's none. There's one on the back side. And then on the right side, hope you can see that. There's a couple there and a couple there. So now we're going to change the tie rod ends, and hopefully it'll also help tighten up our steering a little. Typically your tie rod end, the outer, is what wears out the most, and you'll think you have a loose steering, but that's usually the main reason why the steering isn't quite as responsive as you'd like it. We're going to set this down and then measure the camber, see where we're at. You cannot measure camber up in the air. The rotors will fall, so it'll look like you actually have positive camber, but once you set it down, the weight will bring it back in. And I'll also show you how to measure the toe redneck style, so you can at least take it somewhere and have your toe alignment done if you don't have the gauges yourself. One of the tricks I like to do is back the nut off just one full revolution, and then take this off and put the other one up till it's about a full revolution, and that way when I put in the new tie rod in, it's pretty close to where it was. Now, because we adjusted the camber, this isn't going to probably be close at all, but at least we won't be too far off. One thing I forgot to mention is if you adjust the rear camber, this is how you adjust the toe. It's just like the front end, but these are actually called toe bars instead of tie bars. So if you're going to do that, then I would also go ahead and replace the outer rear tie rod end or toe rod end. All right, I'm back. I took the shims out to adjust the front camber. One word of caution: when you're going to adjust the camber, I would do the fronts and then adjust your toe so you can keep it in line with the back, and then do the backs and adjust the camber and the toe, and then line it up with the front. And that way at least you have a reference point for when you're adjusting the camber. So let's go ahead, let's open up the hood. Got the tires back on. To adjust toe, you will need to have the car down on a flat surface. And here's just a little tip. If you're afraid of this hood falling on you, there you go. Now you don't have to worry about it. So with the 245 that we took out, you can see here, maybe, you can see there's no shim behind that one. And that one has the one shim on the driver's side. On the passenger side, you can see down in there, we still got two, and two on that one of them smaller. So by doing it that way, hopefully our camber adjustment will be equal on both sides. Before you go to measure the toe, your toe in, your toe out. You want to make sure all your tires are inflated the same amount. I usually do around 32 pounds each. It gives a nice hard tire so that when you're aligning it to the front or to the back, at least you know you're not sitting too low. So on the passenger side here, right now we're at, that's the plus, and it's moving, and then we go flush up to the top of the rim, seated on the inside of the rim. We're at about -6 degree camber. And on the driver's side, we're about -0.7 degree camber. So we're off by 0.1 degrees. So using the shims and making sure we take equal amounts off each side was effective, and it did work. Now, unfortunately, that's all you're going to get out of a C4. There's no more adjustment for camber other than doing that, unless you go ahead and invest in some adjustable A-arms. The C5, C6s, you can get some more out of them because they're not simply relying on shims as far as I know. So now let's move on to adjusting the toe from the back to the front to see where our toe's at. All right, it's not very warm out, but I wanted to open the garage door just to have some better lighting to show you what I'm doing. What I've done, this is called the Redneck Alignment System, trademark 2022 by One-Eyed Willie. And what you want to do is, I just tie this little string here. Hopefully you can see that. You pull the string tight across the center of the tire. Pull it all the way up to the front. So you pull the string to the center of this wheel, and here's what you'll notice. When you have a correct alignment, it's going to touch the front tire before it touches the back tire. So I've got about 1/4 of an inch. Touching here, 1/4 inch there. I've got 74 and 5/16 there. I've got 74 5/16 and one more notch. So it's a little bit open, and for track you will want the front to be open, either even or open up to 1/4 inch. So this isn't quite as aggressive, but it'll do for everyday use and track use. Now, if you don't have this kind of toe gauge, don't worry about it. Trust me, the string is actually seems to be more accurate. As you're doing this, you want to make sure your wheel is straight up and down, and the play from left to right is also even. And as you adjust the tie rod, you'll notice this wheel will drift. It might go one way, it might go the other. So as you're using the string, you'll have to, as you walk by, it's good to just touch it and make sure it's still in the middle, and the play is also equally distributed between left and right. So I'm going to walk this string around, come around the other side, doing the same thing. I'm going to pull this tight over the center of the wheel, bring it all the way through here. If you can still see that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to hold a camera and do this at once. Okay, and then I pull it tight and then touch. So you'll notice on the passenger side, this is touching. This is about 1/4 inch. So it's exactly where I want both of them to be. When you're adjusting the tie rod, the outer tie rod end may actually pivot left or right. You want to make sure that this stays perpendicular to the shaft here. And if it moves, then you just use the crescent wrench down in here to move it. Okay? And then this takes a 13, which I think is common. This is a 22 millimeter. And you basically back this off until you get it straight. Now, if you have to push one side out, which is common, you want to make sure you back it off and then bring it back a half a turn, pulling it back in. That eliminates the slop, the backlash, and the inner tie rod. Now, normally what I do is I'll only move 2 half turns or 3, 4 at the most, and then I'll go to the other side, see where I'm at, and then adjust that one, and just keep going back and forth, always inspecting the steering wheel to make sure that it stays centered. You don't want to move too much, because you may move one and then find out now you got to back it off, and then now you're dealing with backlash again. Now when you're really close, I like to start the car. That way I'm actually using the power steering pump and turn it back and forth, maybe 1/8 of a turn each way, and then bring it back to center and then see where I'm at. You'll find that once you turn the car back on with the power steering, that your alignment may shift a little bit. You're going to do this, I hate to say, it takes me probably 20 times. So I do this one, go to that one, come back, come back, come back, come back, get it exactly where I want it, then I turn it on, and then I turn the steering wheel, and then see where I'm at, and adjust, and then I'm good. Now when you go to tighten up this nut, which is a 22, you'll want to keep a wrench on the tie rod, make sure the tie rod does not move. You can go ahead and put your wrench on the outer tie rod end and tighten this nut, but typically what happens is the inner tie rod will move. So you don't want to tighten this nut and then have the inner tie rod move on you, or you've undone everything that you just did. So that's all for how to do the alignment, how to adjust the camber. If you have any questions, or if you'd like me to detail more exactly how to do these things, just let me know. I know there's videos you can type in specifically what you're looking for, and they'll teach you step by step how to do everything. That's how I learned all of this. I'd never really worked on cars until about a couple years ago, so this was all new to me. I'm just passing on the knowledge to you. Thank you for watching. Please like this video if you found it helpful at all. Leave any comments if you have questions. And have a good day, and God bless.